place to listen to all things pop and soft rock. This is The Raw Beat. Hello and welcome to a very exciting episode of The Raw Beat. Today I talk to the wonderful Debs Wild, Coldplay fan liaison and former A&R Scout, about her incredible career and the story of how she discovered one of the biggest bands the world has ever seen. So here's a quick preview of what's coming up on today's show.
Coming soon.
That's what they were called, the Coldplay. And I thought, well, I better see this lot. So I walked in that room when they were playing and the hairs on my arm stood up. People say what you're looking for. And I used to say, I don't know, I'll know when I hear it. That was the feeling that I had going, this is what I'm looking for. Just turned it up and there was no one in the office. And it was just like bigger, stronger coming through the speaker. It was 10 times whatever I felt in the room. I can't believe this is amazing. Then I said to my boss, this is Coldplay. They haven't changed. They are honestly the nicest people. They are so funny. Watching it build and grow and change like that has been amazing. We went from experiencing gigs to shows. It was like a spectacle. It's an experience. Because I know Chris well enough to know that it's mapped out. Whatever's coming, I've no doubt that he knows exactly what it is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it's going to be. There are times when we just sort of go, how did this happen? And they don't take it for granted. And I don't. One big highlight, 26 years in the making.
The place to listen to all things pop and soft rock. This is The Raw Beat. It's the moment we've all been waiting for, and I'm so excited to bring you this incredible interview. Thank you so much to Debs Wild for taking time out of her very busy schedule to share her stories and wisdom with us. So, are you ready? Let's dive right in.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your really busy schedule to do this. It's absolutely very appreciated. It's going to be amazing to hear your experiences of course, Coldplay, but then also the music industry as a whole. I think that's a really valuable insight you've got there. So my first question is, what first got you interested in music and the music industry?
It's quite funny, this story, because it feels like a lifetime. Well, it is a lifetime ago. I'm quite old now. When I was younger, there was a lot of music in my house. Like, none of my family were musical, but we always had music on. My mum played, actually that's a lie, my mum played piano, and we had this kind of weird organ. And even though I couldn't play, I used to love just sitting, going through all the, the things that it did and just pretending I could play. I did go for piano lessons, but I just wasn't very good. But my brother is 6 years older than me. So between like what they were listening to, I had the spectrum of everything from punk to, my brother loved ABBA, but he also loved the Sex Pistols. So then my mum liked Elaine Page and the Beatles and Elvis, and dad loved Steelers Wheel. And, so we had lots of things going on in the house and the music was always playing. But then I started listening to records and the radio to a point where at night, I'd put when I first got my first Walkman, I remember, and I used to listen to the radio in the dark at 11 p.m., which on a school night, and used to be like, just listen to the last bars of whatever song had been voted on Piccadilly Radio, because they used to vote for songs like charts every night or whatever, and kind of slowly became obsessed, finding my own things. So my thing was like, because I grew up in the 80s, so I was born in the 60s just about, and so 70s, but the 80s, it was sort of, new romantics and still punk and goth and just so much stuff to absorb. And I was very much down that kind of, I was Duran Duran, loved Duran Duran. But then I heard Frankie Goes to Hollywood for the first time, and it was Relax, and it was subsequently banned on Radio 1. It was like, this is amazing. But Altered Images actually was the first one before that. So I was finding my own little way, but then I used to get obsessed with the charts. Back then, this weird thing would happen where, you'd have new entries and songs would go up and songs would go down and they might come in at number 39 and then slowly get to number 1 over weeks. So it was really exciting to watch that. And I became quite obsessed that I had, this is why I'm laughing, had a book. It wasn't leather, but it looked quite posh. And a silver ink pen, because they were all the rage in the 80s. And I used to listen to the countdown, top 40 countdown on a Sunday, and I'd record it, which is very naughty. But I recorded it so I could check the kind of, I wrote down how many new entries, how many up, how many down, non-movers. Even if I went on holiday, I'd ask somebody to do it for me and then write it when I came back, because I was like, I can't miss it. And my dad once said, if you put as much effort into your schoolwork as you did into this music thing, and now we kind of laugh about the fact that it took me a while, but yeah, good job I didn't really. But there were no kind of performing arts schools or, courses for me. And I went to a school that wanted you to be doctors and lawyers and stuff. So I didn't tap into the creative thing till way, way too late. So I didn't know it could be an option. So going back a long way of answering your question, it took me a long time because I just assumed that I'd have to get a proper job and do something, like a career choice, rather than, well, this is what I love. This is a passion. I didn't know it existed. So I didn't start doing it. I was in my 20s. So yeah, but it all started from just a very gentle obsession, being a fan, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were an A&R Scout for quite some time, and you've spotted loads of acts. A lot of them have become absolutely massive. I mean, of course, we've got Coldplay, but reading through online, you've also been involved in Keen, Elbow, and Muse, all of which are huge.
Yes and no. So yes, to some extent, but the no, I was last on Muse. I was so slow, and I feel like this is cathartic and great. Sometimes you get credited with things you didn't do. So like somebody once said, because Debs, she was the first person who wanted to sign 1975. And I was like, no, I wasn't. I started that rumour. That never happened. So sometimes you have to correct the kind of readdress the balance. So the thing is, Coldplay, yes, absolutely. But somebody put them on in the first place. They weren't busking. Do you know what I mean? So I can't take all the credit. But I just was the first to kind of, from a label who wanted to sign them, who then tried to help them when my boss passed on it. So that I'll take that on. Muse, however, there was a band I was obsessed with. They gave me a tip off about this amazing band called Muse, and very unlike me, I have to say, for then, I didn't really follow it up. And then when I kind of was hearing, I was like, oh God, yeah, and I know about this band. I'm supposed to be seeing this band. And I went to see them and was like, oh my God, they're amazing. So I wasn't really there I should have been. So I that was an error. Elbow, I knew as a different band. So I'd known them because we were all knocking around Manchester at the same time. And I had taken their first demo to my first label. Nothing really happened. They won't mind me saying this, but Elbow back then, they were they were a little bit obtuse. You meet a lot of bands who want a record deal, but will prevent it. They'll self-sabotage and they'll act in a way that you go, do you want this or not? And they were one of them, where you kind of felt like every time you wanted a meeting or you wanted a chat, they were a bit like, A&R. But I got on with them and we worked at the same venue. So I used to book bands at the Manchester Roadhouse. And every member of Elbow has worked at the Manchester Roadhouse at some point or other. So our paths were crossing. But I never really got a chance with that one because, we didn't really make it out of the trap for that one. And then Badly Drawn Boy was something that I'd literally, again, I was one of the first people, but that was not, no magic trickery here, but I knew him. We were born 3 days apart. We technically should have been born in the same hospital because we're both from Bolton, but we weren't. But I'd known his sisters. And just one day kind of heard that he was making music and just said, oh, come round. And he came round with a Tesco shopping bag with cassettes in it. And just we made a compilation tape and I took it to Epic Records at the time. And my boss took it out of the machine and threw it back and went, so that was one thing. There was a few other things that did quite well. The Keen thing was interesting because I was in publishing at the time, so that wasn't records. They didn't have a record deal, and I actually heard about them through Coldplay. It was their manager had spoken to Keen's manager, Adam, and said, you need to speak to Debs. She's got great ears. You'll get on. Call her. So I think he'd forgotten that he'd said that. And then Adam got in touch. I went to a rehearsal. There should have been 4 of them in the room. One of them didn't turn up. Just said, and I'd never, ever say this to anyone else. I don't know what possessed me. They went, oh, we're so embarrassed. What should we do? And I just thought, well, just play if you want. I mean, telling a 4-piece to play as a 3-piece. Anyway, I went to see them a week after as a 4-piece. But again, where I was working, my publishing boss, he just didn't like them. Just not interested. He said, I don't like it. So I didn't really shout about that band as much because I was in the middle of kind of moving and changing jobs and all of that kind of stuff. And then I ended up Keen. I took to 2 other places subsequently. And just no one was interested. So I didn't really, I know it's kind of crazy. And then they were like pursuing other avenues at publishing route, but I was just kind of, well, that's 3 people have passed on it, publisher and 2 labels. So I kept in touch with them. I always keep in contact with the bands that I try to sign. Would like to think is I'm a fan first and foremost. You know, I don't know how well they're going to do, but if I love them, then I'm going to still see them. So I pretty much still see all of these people we're talking about. I'm still in contact with or still go and see them because I still am a fan and love them. So, but yeah, so credit where credit's due. I didn't really discover any of those bands. but I was, obviously Coldplay is something that people know about, but yeah.
We'll come on to that in a second. But what was it like being an A&R Scout? Is my main question, really.
It was amazing. I was actually 2 nights ago, I was with 2 of my friends, who we all used to kind of bump into each other at gigs. I was very much like one of those people I wouldn't necessarily tell anybody who I was going to see. And then I'd be surprised when you see half the music industry, they're going, oh. So, you know, there was a circuit, but because I got kind of thrown in at the deep end because when I was in Manchester, I was working for a label, I was an assistant to the label manager, and then everybody got fired apart from me. So I ended up kind of running it. And then I was just obsessed with going to see bands for no reason. But I didn't know behind the scenes other people were noticing. So my first break came from somebody saying, oh, I believe you're scouting regionally for Epic Records. And I went, no. And he went, no, well, they said you were. And I went, well, that's news to me. And I rang the guy up at Epic. I went, have you got something to tell me? I'm like, am I working for you? He went, oh God, yeah, I forgot to tell you. So we want you to come down for an interview. So I went down, the boss, and it was the quickest interview I've ever had for anything. He literally went, so you're in Manchester, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you like Liverpool? And I went, yeah. And he went, so you'll cover Liverpool as well? I went, yeah. He went, okay, let's go get lunch. That was it. That was the only question. Nothing about what music do you like, what experience have you got, which was nil. My background was working with children, so I used to just say, well, you know, I've worked with children, I can work with artists, and made a joke out of it, because I thought, well, I've got nothing apart from, you know, I've been to see a lot of bands, and that was it. But I did go gigging a lot. I loved it. The actual job was quite hard, because you can be traveling around the country, up and down, you know, on your own, going out 6-7 nights a week, 3 or 4 venues a night, 10 bands sometimes, you never know. And it could get quite lonely and quite frustrating, and especially when your boss is, oh, I'm signing it. And I used to say it's not like being an A&R Scout, more of an A&R Snout, because it's like, what's everybody else doing? Got asked that question more than what I liked. It's like, well, why are you asking what they like? It's like, I thought I was supposed to tell you what I like. And it's like, yeah, but what they doing? What's everybody else doing? So there was a lot of that as well. But the time, I mean, my first, I'd say 1996 properly, 95, 96. But that was just such an incredible time for music anyway. let alone being in Manchester in that time. Then 2 years later, moving to London and being like, wow, this is amazing. So I was just so happy that, it was like a dream I didn't even know I had come true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was incredible. I loved it.
You're listening to Ben Cunningham talking to Debs Wild. In the first section, we talked about Debs' career as an A&R Scout. Now we'll hear about the beginnings of Coldplay.
And then, of course, my favourite band, Coldplay. You've been with them from the start, and still doing a lot of work with them now. So how did you know they were something special when you first discovered them?
See, that's a great question, because even with hindsight and knowing where they are now, I didn't. Going back to what I said, I think I was once taught a valuable lesson, and this might have been after Coldplay, I can't remember, but somebody once said to me, if you had £1 and it was your pound, would you put it was before Coldplay, would you put it on this, So I escalated that into my head going, well, if I had a house, would I remortgage it for this band? Because I thought, let's go all in. Let's see how much I have for this band. Or if it was my money, would I spend it? And quite quickly, I learned that who I liked and who I didn't based on that decision. My other little litmus test, which I thought was hilarious, was if this came on the radio, would I change it? Because I'm that person, that annoying person in a pub where I'm listening to it, I'm nodding yes, yes. But I'm like, oh my God, I can hear such a thing. It's Prince playing in the background, or, I can't help it. My ears just pick up. So because I used to do a lot of driving up and down the country, I'd listen back then, it was cassettes. I'd put cassette. This sounds harsh, by the way, but it's you'll understand why. Listen to cassette. If I didn't like it, eject, throw it on the back seat. If I liked it, I'd put it in the foot pool of the passenger side. Then at the end of the trip, put all the ones I didn't like in one bag, gather up the others for the journey back, listen to them again. And it would go, sounded good the first time, but not that. So that would be the thing.
Yeah.
So that's why the radio thing worked for me, because I was like constantly in the car driving to and from gigs or wherever. So I thought, well, if it's not holding my attention, or sometimes if the intro's too long, you can fast forward, I'd give them a chance. First song's not so good, give the second one. But that's why CDs were good. Not that I had a player in my car. But yeah, I kind of had all these little levels of thing. So with Coldplay, I hadn't had the chance to hear them before I saw them. There were 54 bands playing over 3 nights, and 2 of them I'd never heard of. And one was the Coldplay. That's what they were called, the Coldplay. And I thought, well, I better see this lot.
Yeah.
So I walked in that room when they were playing, and the hairs on my arm stood up. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. It was raining outside. It was very quiet. You go through the door, they were behind me on the stage, so I had to physically turn and thought, oh God, at the front. And right there. And I think at that point, Chris was kind of singing something sort of on his own, and then Johnny will have come in with guitars, atmospherics. And I just remember thinking, wow, not like, this song is amazing, they look amazing. None of that. It was the opposite. It's just this atmosphere, this vibe, this sound. There's just something that I hadn't experienced up to this point in kind of the job, if you like. There was a band actually in Manchester called the Italian Love Party, just Italian Love Party. They had a similar effect. I didn't realise at the time. So they were very Radiohead and very this and very that. And I think Coldplay probably thought they were as well. But I didn't quite see that. I was like, oh, this sounds like Jeff Buckley. Or, I was hearing falsetto vocals and just haunting guitar sound and stuff like that. So for me, it was more about how it made me feel. And then I had to obviously switch on the bit of right, okay, so let's have a look at them. And I was like, oh, okay, right, yes, okay, let's leave that then. So it was just, I stayed for the whole set, which is very unusual in that environment, because you get normally 3 songs and you have to run off to the next gig, because there's obviously lots of bands. But I couldn't. I just wanted to know what the next song was going to be and how it was going to be, and I just loved it immediately. But there are no Shivers, no Yellows, no, some of those songs did make it out into the world, but they were still in their first incarnation. And then as I was leaving the venue at the end of the set, I saw this card on the notice board, like a cork notice board on the way out. And I just grabbed it because it said Phil Harvey, Uber Bitch Promotions. And I don't know how I knew that that was their manager, because it was Chris's details in the little handbook that came with the delegates pass that, because it was a convention of music. I should say it was a music industry convention that I went to. And by the way, it's interesting to note, the reason they were on the bill in the first place, I think they'd applied and hadn't heard back, but the daughter of the guy who was the A&R person on the panel, she knew someone who went to uni with Phil, and he passed it to them, who passed it to her, and she passed it to her dad. But obviously, she'd not listened to it and thought it was dreadful, assuming she hadn't, because, you know, she had brilliant ears, Charlotte Sachs. And I think, you know, that was just one of those things. That's why I hadn't heard of them. It's why I was in that room. I'm quite sure if I had heard them, I'd still be in that room, because when I did hear the demo a few days later, my goodness me, still, Save to you, Pete, one of the best things I've ever heard. Anyway, so yeah, that's sort of how it came to be in that room. But I didn't know. I just had a feeling, and I knew that people say what you're looking for. And I used to say, I don't know, I'll know when I hear it or see it, whatever, experience it. And that was the feeling, I suppose. That's the only way I can define how it made that different to anyone else. That was the feeling that I had, going, this is what I'm looking for. This is what it is. This is the job. This is finally. I was like, yeah. So that was it, I guess. So, you know, again, no genius involved, just a feeling and a kind of, I like it. And if I like it, other people will like it. Because, yeah, you can't really know more than that. I mean, you can, you know, you can hear a hit song, but when you're presented with the Coldplay with no hit songs, you can't say, oh, that's a hit. Yeah, so there were minus hits, but the rest of it was something, there was potential as well, because, as I say, they didn't look fantastic in terms of kind of styling or whatever. They're just four boys who were at university together, obviously. And there were some little nuances that Chris had that I thought were quite endearing, I suppose, but it was, yeah, there was some fine tuning to be had all around. But yeah. Sorry, my answers are quite long, aren't they?
No, it's really, really nice. Is your book, I read through Your Life in Technicolor, but hearing it from you with all this detail is just absolutely incredible.
Oh, thank you.
You're listening to the Raw Beats interview with Debs Wild, where we're currently talking about the origins of Coldplay.
What happened next?
Well,
would you mind telling more about that?
This is what I love about this. So, first of all, if you asked Chris Martin about that story I've just told, he'd say there was 3 people in the room. There were more than 3 people in it. I mean, it was a small room. I have to say that. It was a small room, but there were quite a few people in that room. But nobody was paying attention apart from the first few rows. And there were a couple of industry people there who probably would rather say they weren't, but they were, and they left. But when I did, so that was the first night proper, so it was Monday, and I was going to be there till Thursday, and then went back to London. So I'd called Phil. Now he then picks the story up lovely, because I didn't know this, of course, till many years later, that when I called him, he was in a sleeping bag, sleeping on the floor of Chris and Johnny's flat in Camden after probably a late night. And he was feeling quite miserable because they'd been up to Manchester and nothing had really happened. No one had, you know, come out and gone, here's a record deal. And I apparently just woke him up, called him and said, hello, my name's Debs and I'm from Universal Records and I came to your gig the other day and I thought you were great. And he said everything changed after that, because he, not the band, just speaking to Phil, I think he was thinking, I can't do anything for them. And I think he was about to give up. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if this hadn't happened. But I basically
might not have been a Coldplay.
Well, I think there would, because I like to think that I'm a great believer in, you know, what the universe has set for us and destiny and fate, whatever you want to call it. I don't really know. But Chris definitely had a plan, and I don't think he had a plan B. So I have no doubt in my mind it was going to happen. Now, it might have taken a bit longer, And it might have been different people and different routes. We don't know. But I have no doubt it would have still been, maybe with Phil missing, because he might have given up. I don't know, but I'd like to think he wouldn't either. But when he said that, and he didn't tell me that long ago, I was like, I didn't know that. It's like, I had no idea that's where you were. You sounded so put together. But he was obviously trying to be very professional. And he sent me the safety EP. Now, when you're at a record label, the A&R department have meetings to discuss, well, new things that we're looking at, also things that we've signed. So it's everything really. We were in this meeting and my boss said, right, have we got anything new to introduce? And I went, yeah, I have. And we had a few things. It wasn't just one, but I said, yeah, I've got this band called the Coldplay. And he said, well, play it. I went, well, I can't because I haven't got it yet. I said, but you need to write it down. I need it on the minutes that I'm introducing them now. And they were a bit like, I went, no, it's coming. It's coming. I've spoken to the manager and I'm going to meet the band. But so they put it in the notes. And then I came out of the meeting and everyone went for lunch and it had arrived while I was in the meeting. So I opened it up and I was so excited and I put it on. And honestly, even now my hair's going like mad on me. And that's what happened. And I just turned it up and there was no one in the office. And it was just like bigger, stronger coming through the speakers. And it was like, oh my God. It was like 10 times whatever I felt in the room. I'd seen them live, but this was like, I'm not even joking. I was like, I can't believe this is amazing. So I listened to it. And then this guy from marketing came back from lunch and he just stopped and he went, oh, what's that? And I went, I know, right? I was like, it was amazing. And everybody who was coming in was like, what's this? And then I said to my boss, this is Coldplay. So I was sort of, basically I described it as, I don't know if I actually wrote this analogy in my book because I've used it so much, but I think being an A&R person is like you go out, you like someone, so you ask them out on a date, and then you go on a date, and hopefully you can get engaged and then get married and have kids. Obviously, the kids are albums, just in case you're not sure. But I didn't get that far. We went on our first date, we went on a second date, we went on a third date, but my boss, I wasn't allowed to get engaged, so we didn't get married. So basically, and I was pretty upset about it, and I didn't even know how to break it to the band because at that point I knew I was the only person that wanted to sign them. And quite curiously, I'd introduced them to this guy because they had, I think it was Chris's dad's friend was going to help them out as like lawyer kind of thing, if anything came up. And I went, no, I've got this guy. He's amazing. He's perfect for you because he's not like suited and stuffy like you'd think music lawyers are, which I've got many friends who are in that field and they're not. But this one particularly is quite young and, he'd turn up to gigs in hoodies and jeans and stuff. So you felt like this guy kind of is the right fit. So I kind of, a bit like their mum, trotted them down to Piccadilly Circus to meet Gavin Maud, who is still their lawyer today. And sat in this pub across the way going, go meet him. And then waited for them to come out and go, we really like him. He's really cool. I went, great. And then believe it or not, we went to Burger King. Anyway, probably my shout. Did I treat them? Possibly. Anyway, so there were gigs and, I went to see them again and my boss was late for the first show. I missed them. So I was quite cross. He did eventually see them. He wasn't completely convinced, but, he'd liked what he heard. I don't think he just saw the whole thing as anything big, potentially, whatever. And as I said, no songs. Well, I thought there were, but not hits. So basically then, the only other thing I'd say, apart from I introduced them to people who then introduced it to people and I was a domino effect and they got what they needed. The only other thing I would jump in and say I did, and I spoke to Gavin about this, was I remember them saying, well, we've had an offer. I went, oh, amazing. Who from? And they said, I think they said it was TVT in Canada. And I went, well, what's that? I think it's an entertainment thing. And I went, oh, don't know about that. Like, why would you do that? And they were a bit like, well, there's only you likes us. And I'd broken the news to them that basically my boss had passed on it. And, I was leaving because I'd been offered a job with Simply Red's management because basically Island Records and Universal were merging, and I didn't fancy my chances of keeping my job because I thought, well, I haven't really done anything because we didn't get any of the things that we tried to sign. And it was so strange because they just looked quite deflated. But I said, I know you can't trust me because we don't know for sure. But I was so frustrated for them. I said, if I love you, somebody else will love you. It's like, please don't sign the first deal that comes along. So yeah, I basically think that was a good decision on their part. I'm pretty sure Gavin would agree. So they held back a little bit, and it paid off because obviously quite soon after that they had some really key gigs in front of key people, good introductions. Everybody was backtracking who'd passed on it before, including my boss. Phoned me up and went, "Do you think you can get me a meeting with them?" And I went, "I probably can, but I'll tell you now, they won't sign to you. They'll only come and see you as a favour. So they'll make you look good, but there's not a chance that you pass on them and they're going to come to you." Because they only wanted to sign to Parlophone Columbia or me. And that was quite sweet that he included me, because I don't think that was anything to do with the label. It was just basically, well, you're the only person who wants to at this stage. But yeah, their dream labels were always Columbia and Parlophone, not in that order, in fact, Parlophone Columbia. But yeah, I did actually take them to Columbia Records, played it to their head of radio first. And then he said, "Yeah, you absolutely need to play this and come in." And I did get offered a job. But they offered me like the most insulting wage that I was like, how, I can't even feed myself on that. So that could have gone another way. Who knows? But that said, again, it wasn't to be. And that was not mine and their journey, which sounds really, but you know what I mean? What happened was supposed to happen. So yeah.
You're listening to Ben Cunningham talking to Debs Wild, Coldplay fan liaison, on the story of Coldplay.
And so as I said, you're still working quite heavily with Coldplay. I think one of your duties is fan liaison officer, which is really cool. But mainly because you've stayed so close to the band, how have they changed over the years?
Well, you're not going to believe me. So I did, there was an interview I did last week, and I was asked that question, and I just said, well, they haven't. It's like, what? And I know people don't really believe that, because the only thing that's changed is they're taller, they got older, they wear better clothes, and they have a bit more money in the bank. They haven't changed. They are honestly the nicest people. They are so funny, and I absolutely love them. And I think, in a way, it sounds a bit mad, but I wouldn't still be with them if we didn't have the mutual love and respect that we have. But clearly, if they weren't nice people and didn't have nice people around them, it just wouldn't work. So genuinely, they haven't changed, apart from they're quite famous now. There's more people at their shows. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, we're talking about shows. You've been on a lot of tours with them. Which has been your favourite tour era and why?
Okay. I haven't been on any tours. I went to one. I went on the Viva tour to Latin America, which was a treat, and I'm going to Australia next week, and I cannot wait. But generally speaking, unfortunately, my job doesn't involve touring. I'd quite like it if it did. No, so I do everything remotely. I have been so privileged to be invited out to, they'll say, why don't you come out, choose a show, couple of nights, wherever. So I went to Coimbra in Portugal last year, Warsaw the year before, and yeah, I did the Viva tour. I did 3.5 weeks Latin America, and then I do the odd day in, if there's any I want to go to, I might say to a friend, should we just get a flight and a hotel and just go? And, that's like me, might as well be calling it a holiday, really. It's not, because I end up working, but it's, that's not going on tour. But, however, yeah, touring is also, I think, not as, I want to go on tour because I want to see the world. But I soon learned that's not really how it works. It can be at some level, but the machine of a band of this size is, there is a lot going on. So, everybody is so busy behind the scenes. It's just quite relentless. So I guess anybody that wants, they're off stage, they just probably sleep. So I'd probably be quite bored going, why is everybody not out partying and doing things? But yeah, so I think, though, I've really enjoyed the last tour, but I can't help say it's a really tricky one because I thought the Head Full of Dreams, because that was like the first time everything happened. So, obviously I was at the first show that the wristbands were ever
Oh, wow.
premiered. Which was really exciting. It was a bullring gig in Madrid, and it was filmed. It was an American Express sponsored thing, and Anton Corbin directed it, and it was great. But it was like, will they work? Because they'd literally just arrived in a box. So anyway, they worked. They looked amazing. So then you tag on the thing of, they've had balloons before, and there's been fireworks before, and there's been confetti before, and then a Head Full of Dreams tour just was like everything. And it was just like amazing. So watching it build and grow and change like that has been amazing. But that tour, yeah, I think because I'd never experienced anything that could knock off Prince from the top spot of Love Sex in 1988. And then here was this show. And that was the difference. We went from experiencing gigs to shows. It was like a spectacle. It's an experience. And it was just so joyful that you think it kind of separated everything that had gone before. It was just a really great live show. But I think this was just like next level of everything. And then so is Music of the Spheres.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a standout. Obviously, I was at the early ones as well, though. So, I remember the first time they had a backdrop and getting excited. Like with Coldplay on it rather than whoever the band on next was, or just a plain thing. So whenever they had anything of their own, or entrance music, hearing entrance music, they've got their own entrance music. So even those, like, I have fond memories of, like the Parachutes tour was just incredible. And, I could still cry now listening to Everything's Not Lost, because that was the closer of the set. And I used to get sad at the end of a tour going, I'm not going to hear this again. It's not been that bad. I'm going to have a word. But yeah, so there's been so many, but yeah. And the Viva tour, because I was on confetti duties after during Lovers in Japan, I was setting off the confetti. So God, how can I leave that out? Yeah, that's harder. This is a harder question than another one coming, but I suspect I should sit down and really think about that, because maybe that, I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things that just changes. So for now, I'm going to stick with what I said, Head Full of Dreams tour. But yeah.
Okay.
But now I want to watch all of them. Again, I want to go back and watch them all.
The place to listen to all things pop and soft rock. This is The Raw Beat. You're listening to Ben Cunningham talking to Debs Wild, Coldplay fan liaison, on the story of Coldplay.
Okay, so the next one, people ask me a lot about what's my favourite Coldplay song, and I can never give a definitive answer. I normally say Adventure of a Lifetime, because that's the song that got me into Coldplay. But talking to you before we started, you said there's a very definitive answer for you, which I'd be really interested in knowing.
Well, it's so strange, because for a while it was also Chris's favourite song, which I didn't know till later. But my favourite song is Politic, for a number of reasons. And as much as I could give you my top 10 of, this is nostalgic goes here, and this goes here, and the one that current favourite goes here, and like the one that makes me cry, and the go-to happy song, Adventure of a Lifetime, absolutely love. But the reason I love Politics so much is because not only, I remember the first time I heard it, and they hadn't done anything like that, obviously, at the point of that opening thing of just being smacked in the head going, oh my God, what's this? And you see it live, and, it's just coming at you. And that's like, I've got goosebumps again. Goosebumps. I love it so much. But the reason it's my favourite is because it's the song that Chris has. It sounds quite egotistical now I'm saying it like this. This is the song that Chris has name checked me the most. So if he's ever saying anything, apart from recent times where it's been an old song like Sparks or Don't Panic or anything, it's the one where he said it a lot in Manchester. He said it a lot in South America. And in fact, there was this moment where I was on my own in a stadium just getting ready because the next song was Lovers in Japan. So I was getting ready to do my confetti job. And Chris would change the line to give Debs a kiss. And I'd be standing in this stadium on my own, excuse me, and think, like looking around going, oh my God, so weird. He just said that. And I'm on my own. No one knows it's me. And it was just that little nod. And he did it at least 5 times on that tour. And it was always that lovely thing of, you don't know why you pop into his head or why. And I know it's because he knows it's my favourite song. And it's also once there was his PA back in the day, Vicky, phoned me up. Oh no, she texted and said, don't answer your phone. And she phoned me from Johannesburg on my birthday because they were performing. It was the night they would have filmed the Paradise video. But it was that show, they did Politic. And somebody sent me a recording of it properly because I couldn't hear it. But he says my name so many times during the song, it actually starts to become almost embarrassing because he's like, happy birthday, Debs, happy birthday, like so many times. But I've got this perfect recording of it. So when I hear it, I just feel like it's my song.
Yeah.
Of course it isn't. But just quickly to tag on, I know you didn't ask me this, but we'll just tell you this. Every time I go to a tour, the first night I see that show, one song will pick me from that leg of the tour, and I never know which it is, and that will be the song that I will stop. I won't watch the band. I'll watch the crowd, and I'll just literally turn my back, won't watch the stage, and take it all in and have a minute, just my little moment. It's normally, I have to say, the last few shows I've gone, oh, is it yellow again? It's like really funny when it's yellow, because you're like, has happened quite a lot that it's yellow. But I just know that when it happens, I'm like, oh, this is the moment. And it's a really special moment. But yeah, it used to be, politics used to just be for me, as if I was the only person in the room. So it's always just been right up there. I can't really knock it off because it just means so much to me. Bigger, stronger, obviously for different reasons is, you know, such a rush. Just because of, like I said, there's nostalgic ones. And there's, like you say, if yours changes, does it change depending on what's happening in your life or just what you're listening to, or?
Yeah, what I'm listening to. I mean, I was lucky enough to see them live for the first time in London. It must be 2022 now, but so Higher Power I really liked, but when it hits you live, it goes black and then Higher Power just starts blasting out. That's now become one of my favourite songs just because of that moment, I think.
I think that's an interesting point because when you do hear the songs, as soon as you've heard it live, then when you hear it again, you can't unsee what you experienced. And I talked to a lot of fans about this because we were laughing saying there's ad-libs that Chris does live. And things that he does that when we hear it on the radio or wherever, we're all doing that thing that Chris does or saying that thing that he does, or, you know, and we all do it. And I've been in a room with the fans when it's actually happened away. Oh, we all do that. I do that. Then you can't help it. And you know when the confetti's coming, you know when the fireworks are going off, you know when the wristbands are lining up. And that is such an amazing thing through the music of, it's almost like Chris knows as he's writing it, this is what it's going to look like in the stadium. And then it comes to life. It's a bit like having a pop-up book. You can someone can read the words or you can look at it and open it and it'll just 3D at you in your face. And I think that is what Coldplay's music does. It isn't just something to listen to. And I think you're spot on there. When you hear something live, it changes completely. And you never hear it the same. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So this might be similar, but what's been your highlight of working with Coldplay?
See, I think my highlights tend to be theirs. So like them doing the Paralympics closing ceremony, doing the Super Bowl, winning the first Brit that they got, just things to kind of go, you deserve this. Do you know what I mean? I feel like every milestone they achieve makes me proud and happy for them. But obviously, I've really enjoyed being along for the ride. And it feels like a privilege to have done that. The last Glastonbury, for example, was just so amazing. And I got a really good place to watch it from this time. I didn't last time where I watched it back on telly. I'm like, this is amazing. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say hated it. I meant where I was standing, not the show.
No.
And where I was this time, I was just like, oh, this is amazing. I could like literally experience everything. So yeah, those moments are really special. And again, not just me, it's watching the joy it brings to other people. That never fails to get me when I just see. And obviously, again, going back to what you said, part of my job is fan liaison. So I do get first-hand feedback about how their music makes people feel. So all of that, knowing what they're doing. You know, when people say, you know, it's not rocket science, or they'll say it's not saving lives, it's not this, it's like, well, it absolutely is saving lives, actually. It's like music is so important. And I see how important the band are to so many people. And I think
absolutely
that is like a massive thing for me to experience. It's not so much a highlight, so much as a gratitude to be here with it. You know, all of it just feels like a highlight, because there are times when we just sort of go, how did this happen? You know, we're just in that little room, and now look at us. Kind of, we do have those conversations, you know, we're not, and they don't take it for granted. And I don't, because, you know, they didn't have to bring me along. So yeah, all of it. One big highlight, 26 years in the making.
You're listening to The Raw Beat, where Ben Cunningham is currently talking to Coldplay fan liaison Debs Wild. Next, we move on to Moon Music and what's coming next.
And then I don't know how much you'll be able to tell me about it, because I know there's some exciting stuff in the pipeline. But what are you most looking forward to next?
Well, you see, it's interesting because one of the things, but I never tell like family and friends what's going on. And sometimes I don't tell them because I don't know, but normally it's like, I just wouldn't. But at the minute, it's all still just going along at such a rate of like, we're still touring and there's an album just come out and it's so still woohoo that I haven't even thought about what's coming. And like occasionally people go, oh, is it true there's 2 more albums? I went, yeah, that's what Chris is saying. So yep. And it's like, and then we just said quite recently that album 12's coming for 11. And people go, well, how does that work? I went, well, we'll see. But you know, it's like, I almost don't ask. I have a vague idea of what's happening, but I don't ask because we're doing this. Do you know what I mean? So when you're working in something like this as well, you look at itineraries, you know, like back 2 years ago, knowing that 2 years on we're doing this is a bit like, oh wow, I'm already in 2024. So in that respect, I think it's probably wise right now for me to go, let's just get through this next bit and have a bit of a rest, have a sleep at Christmas before it starts again next year. But I'm very much looking forward to Wembley, I can't lie, because I decided that this year I didn't really go to a lot of shows. I did Glastonbury and I did Luton. And then I did go to Dublin because my best friend from primary school, Gina, she lives there. And I wanted to experience it with her because we've never managed to. And I'm going to Australia and I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to next summer, you know, because
me too.
Wembley still feels like, even though, you know, Chris doesn't live in London, it's still like a homecoming gig. So I'm very excited because I remember 2 years ago, I was in Brussels and Chris came over and he was like, oh, you know, chat. And he was so animated and excited. And then he said, oh, I've got to tell you something. And he told me something that was happening at Wembley, like, and I was like, oh, okay. And he was telling me that Alan Partridge was coming on and he was buzzing. He was so excited. But then when anybody I'd talked to, when I say anybody, there's a specific person at work that I won't name check. When I'd say, oh, so who else are we having at Wembley? And he'd go, I'm not telling you. I went, why not? And he said, because it won't be a surprise, will it? And I'd say, don't want it to be a surprise. I want to know who am I coming to see? But actually, I kind of quite like the fact that one of my work colleagues is going, no, you'll have to wait and see. Thinking, oh, now I want to ask somebody else. No, okay. But so it was, I wouldn't sometimes know. Sometimes I would know, or I'd be at sound check and I'd know, or Chris would tell me. But most of the time you kind of go, well, maybe it's nice to just actually be in the experience it as the fan that I still am. So yeah, so I don't know beyond that, because I'm desperately trying not to. One of my jobs as well is I do archiving, and sometimes I see and hear things that haven't been heard or seen. I might never be heard or seen, and they might, but I don't know. So even though I'm kind of going, oh, I wonder if that's going to be on, that, I don't know. And I kind of am deliberately trying not to find out, because and it's not like the less I know, the better, because I am very discreet. I'm very good at keeping secrets. It's just because I just try and I'm trying to be more present and in the moment as well. And obviously working where you're going ahead, it's quite difficult. So it's a work in progress for me. I'm just terrible at that. I'm like, I like to plan. I like to plan ahead. So that's not really a clear answer, is it? But I'm sticking with, I'm looking forward to Wembley, and just to see what's coming. Because I know Chris well enough to know that it's mapped out. Whatever's coming, I've no doubt that he knows exactly what it is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it's going to be. And I always find that so fascinating that I'm along for that ride as well. I'll just let it open up and see. There'll be moments, by the way, I should say, that part of the wonderful thing about Moon music was experiencing it as it was, coming together. And I love that process. I like hearing things. I like hearing version 1 and seeing what gets added to it and seeing what gets taken away and stuff. I do like that process. But equally, I'm never going to be one to sit in the studio. I'd love to. Maybe I should ask, can I come into the studio? But because I love that process. I just love watching them create. It's wonderful. So yeah, maybe that's something I should ask to do, and then I can look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I think on Twitter, Phil said that Moon Music was the best they've made while they were putting it together, and I was really shocked that he'd say that, considering how good everything else they've made. But staying up on that Friday to listen to it for the first time, I realised what he was on about, because I think it's an absolutely incredible album.
Well, I don't know if you'd read my post where I'd admitted to the world, I can't actually hear the title track without crying. The first time I heard it was kind of through an archive thing, and I was like, just heard the piano first, so no vocal, just piano, and then the next time, I'd see it laid and I start to see this song form, and now it's finished. I can't listen to it without crying. It's so beautiful, and that melancholy melody it doesn't even matter what let alone what he's saying. And just that, it feels too short though, but then I'm like, good, because I don't want to prolong the sadness of me crying, but it's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. But yeah, so there's a downside to having this wonderful, beautiful thing, is like, oh God, I'm going to cry. It's like, I went to one of the listening parties in Shoreditch and thought, I'm actually going to cry in front of all these people. But, and I kind of, I shed a tear, but it's so, beautiful. And especially, I think what I love about this, going back, it kind of goes against what we were just talking about. It feels to me like a very much headphone album, but that's because I haven't seen it live yet. So it'd be interesting, because I've not really, any kind of the last gigs I went to, I had to kind of leave early because I don't want to get stuck in traffic at my age, I'm sorry. So I didn't really see a lot of the new songs live yet. So that's what I'm looking forward to. But equally, I love the fact I've had a minute with it. I've been able to listen to it. Also, I should point out that when I do get music early, I always listen to it on headphones. And then when the album gets released, that's the day I blast it loud, because the neighbours, it doesn't matter anymore because it's so loud. Because I hate anybody to hear it and go, no, I'm not saying this would happen, but not paranoia, but I think, imagine if I was playing a song that hadn't been released and somebody was like, that Coldplay, I can hear Coldplay. And then I play a song that's never been heard before. So I don't ever do that. So day one of an album, I'll listen to it with headphones and then I'll blast it out on the CD or vinyl or whatever. So yeah, it's quite a nice to experience all the levels of that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, great.
And then obviously, I'm from a student radio station. So I'd ask, what would be your advice to lots of new student bands we have who are just starting out and hoping to become a big thing too?
Well, my advice hasn't changed much over the years, but I'd have to add on to it. So the first thing I would always say is write good songs, because I think I know albums don't exist in the same sense to a lot of people. So I used to get sent demos and it would be like 10 songs or whatever. And you think that's because you've written 10 songs. That does not an album make. I think to make a great album, fillers if you can, make it, it doesn't have to be, we've learned albums don't have to be that long. But I do feel like if I had this, when I was working for the publishing company, my boss used to say that your songwriting is a muscle that you should try and improve on every day, kind of exercise it every day. And I think if people are really determined, you have to treat it that sort of seriously, as to go, right, just write and write and write, get better, get better, get better, rehearse, 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 gig, gig, gig. It's just like the fundamental thing of going, if you've got a song and that's your best song, write a better song. I used to do this, right? So if I go and see a band rehearse, they think they're playing me the set. They're all geared up to play me what they've just, plan on doing at whatever venue. And I always rock up and go, right, I want you to play your oldest song in the set, the newest song in the set, your favourite song in the set, and your best song in the set. And they all go, what? And I said, that might be 3 songs, might be 2 songs, but might be 4, but let's see, let's start there. And then you see them sort of working out. And the reason I've done it is not necessarily to hear the songs, it's to hear them work out what they think it is. And then whether they know immediately, oh, it's this, definitely that's the best song. That's our, and I like watching that. And I think artists, bands, not always bands, but I think if they try and get the feel for that themselves, great, but take other people's advice. See what, who likes what and why and what works and what doesn't, and kind of make it feel like what you're trying to do, I don't like what does it sound like? Who did they sound like? It's like, hopefully whatever their name is, that's what it sounds like. But also, don't give up. Don't be put off by how difficult it is, because that's the bit that I have now. It's so hard. It's like the one thing that happened to make it easier has also made it harder, which is the internet. Anybody can go on GarageBand or whatever. You can make a song in minutes. Not write a song in minutes. You might be able to, but you know what I mean? We can create this piece of music. We can stick it online and you've got your platform and it's brilliant. You can reach millions of people. However, there's so many people doing that might not happen. So the reason they write good songs is important, of course, is because hopefully the way people are going to stand out is on that merit of going, if you're tight and you're good and you can sing or perform or you have something to say, or not necessarily. I mean, if I have to say, some of the best lyrics that I connect to are in dance songs that you just like dancing your head off to, going, this message in this song's pretty good, but no one's listening because they're all singing the chorus. But I do firmly believe that, if you're going to give up, I would be like, don't bother. I hate to say this, but even from my point of view, I've worked with Coldplay for 26 years. I hadn't just worked with Coldplay for 26 years. I had to do other things because the music industry is tough and you can't sustain a career for, just doing one thing. So sometimes you might have to get a day job to make your music pay. And just be prepared for that. Be prepared to kind of suffer a little bit for your art, because it's not easy. But if you didn't do it, you die. Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to do it. I feel like the compulsion. Prince said that, by the way. It was like, I can't, like breathing. And I just feel like if you've got enough belief in what you're doing and you're so determined that you want to do it, but still realize that the holy grail, if you like, of getting the deal, or that's just when it, starts to, for me, it's not the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is getting your second album, the third album, fourth, or whatever. But I do think making money from music is a bonus. So don't bang on it, literally, because it might never come. But as long as people are still making music, to me, that would. I just hate when bands split up because they haven't made it. You go, oh, please still play. Please still do shows because I think you're amazing. But yeah, I just think don't give up and be good, be better. I know it sounds really silly and simple but it's sort of true. But yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Ted Lasso, believe. That's it. You need that philosophy.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and
thank you.
really, really nice to hear your stories. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ben. It was really lovely to speak with you.
Thank you so much.
Wow, what an incredible story. Once again, thank you so much to Debs Wild for that amazing interview. I'd also like to give a big shout out to everyone who's made this interview possible. Everyone here at your student radio station, Raw 1251 AM, our wonderful exec, and of course, Debs, Coldplay UK, Coldplay Extra, and the Student Radio Association for helping to promote this interview.
The place to listen to all things pop and soft rock. This is The Raw Beat.